Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. In those clothes, with my father murmuring nearby, the most frightening aspect wasn't his inebriation, but rather my mother sprawled unconscious, as usual, from her daily bourbon intake. With a fist poised, my father advanced, poised for another blow, but I'd reached my limit. As his arm swung, I dodged and delivered a punch to his temple, sending him crumpling to the ground. Panting with a mix of relief and revulsion, I stepped past him, grabbed my belongings, touched up my lipstick, and left them both behind, unconscious on the floor. With nowhere else to turn, I trudged through the winter snow, steeling myself to confide in the one person I believed I could trust. My parents' frequent incarcerations, mainly due to drunkenness, left me with no alternative. At 15, I shouldn't have been shouldering the household burden. Enduring hunger, my meager earnings seized for alcohol, and enduring relentless abuse had become unbearable. Despite the danger of dressing as a girl at home, I couldn't suppress my true self. Instead of enduring my parents' nightly stupors, I'd venture out fully dressed. Though my coat concealed my modest curves, my padded figure and long hair still portrayed a feminine image. As the wind whipped and snowfall intensified, I plodded onward to the station. The warmth of the terminal provided solace, and with my last few dollars, I purchased a ticket to Uncle Robert's. My perfume offered a welcome contrast to the train's unpleasant aroma as I remained vigilant in my seat, wary of fellow passengers, knowing all too well the dangers young girls faced. The journey, nearly 3 hours long, passed without incident, easing my apprehension slightly. Stepping onto the platform of the small station, I was immediately met by the onslaught of the storm. Bundled tightly, I trudged through the snow, resigned to walking to his house with no money left. Despite the alien landscape created by the snow, obscuring everything and accumulating on the sidewalks, making progress difficult, a glimmer of hope emerged when a car pulled up beside me. My initial fear that my parents had somehow tracked me down was quickly dismissed. The policeman beckoned me into the warm car and inquired about my destination. After I disclosed it, he wordlessly began driving me toward my uncle's house. The town, a quaint coastal hamlet, mainly comprised suburbanites commuting to a nearby city, including my Uncle Robert. Though not blood-related, I affectionately called him uncle due to his close friendship with my late grandfather. His wife, a retired FBI agent turned executive secretary, had served for over 20 years. Unsure if they were home since I hadn't called ahead, their house remained my sole refuge. I silently hoped they were there as the policeman focused on driving, sparing me from many questions and allowing me to relish the warmth of the car. Eventually, he halted in front of a brick ranch-style house with a winding sidewalk. Expressing gratitude, I ventured through the snow towards the doorbell. Anticipation gnawed at me as I waited, questioning the wisdom of my decision once more. When the door opened, Karen greeted me with concern etched in her eyes. "Who's there?" she inquired. "It's me, Aunt Karen. Thomas. From the city? Come in, you poor dear." Uncle Robert entered the hallway, a puzzled expression fading into recognition when he spotted me. "Thomas," he exclaimed, his voice booming. "Good to see you, lad. Kick off those boots and join us in here." Seated at the kitchen table, we enjoyed freshly brewed coffee and homemade cookies. Determined not to conceal the truth, despite the pain it might cause, I mustered the courage to speak up. I left home today," I began hesitantly. "Your father's at it again, isn't he?" Robert cut straight to the chase, as he always did. "Yeah," I confirmed. "He was drunk, and when he saw how I was dressed, How were you dressed, dear?" Karen interjected gently, her warm eyes fixed on me. I stammered, struggling to find the words. "It's all right, dear, you can tell us," Karen reassured me, her voice steady. "I was dressed as a girl," I finally confessed. A heavy silence hung in the air as they absorbed my revelation, then Robert spoke up. Would you care to explain why, Thomas? He inquired. I had no choice, I replied. I felt like I had to. Was someone forcing you to dress that way? Robert pressed. No, sir, I admitted. Then why? I believe, Karen began gently, that Thomas is trying to express a desire to embrace his identity as a girl. Whatever compelled him to dress that way, leading to this visit. She turned to me, grasping my hand in hers. I'm correct, aren't I, Thomas? You felt you had no choice because you couldn't deny who you truly are, a girl. With a tearful nod, I affirmed her words. Exhausted from the turmoil with my parents and the weight of my confession, I broke down. Karen led me to a spare room, urging me to shower and change while she prepared a meal. The simple act of cleanliness felt like a blessing, and the scent of cooking filled me with anticipation as I returned to the room. On the bed lay my meager belongings, none of them suited for a boy. I donned my best skirt and blouse, hastily smoothing out the wrinkles. After a haphazard attempt at makeup, adding lipstick and brushing out my hair, I emerged from the room and slowly made my way back to the kitchen. Robert noticed me and rose from his seat, gesturing to Karen. I stood exposed, unable and unwilling to conceal the truth I had revealed to them. Anticipating their possible rejection, I assumed they might let me eat and perhaps spend the night before sending me on my way again. But instead, Karen approached me, guiding me to the table and seating me across from Robert. For a moment, he remained silent, then proceeded to pour each of us a cup of coffee. So, he began slowly, you're saying that this is the real you. What should we call you then? Thomas doesn't quite suit a girl as pretty, Karen interjected as she placed the plates on the table. You won't laugh. I hesitated, and they both shook their heads. Jessica Michelle, I murmured softly, peering over the rim of my coffee cup. That's lovely. Now, eat your dinner, Karen encouraged, taking a seat beside me. I must confess, I devoured that meal, cleaning my plate twice. It was the first proper food I'd had in 2 days. Later, as I helped with the dishes. You can't go back home now, Jessica. You realize that, don't you? Karen's tone was gentle yet firm. Yes, If my dad didn't die, he'd beat me senseless the moment he sobered up, I admitted. So, you'll stay with us for a while. I could use the company, and you need someone to talk to. Robert will be fine, he's just not accustomed to having anyone else here besides the two of us. What about? I gestured at my clothes. Oh, that. Right now, your safety and comfort come first. We'll address the rest later, after we've had a chance to talk some more, girl to girl, all right? I hugged her tightly, accidentally dampening her dress with water from my hands. We shared a laugh, and later that night, I slipped into bed, hopeful for a fresh start. Karen was gone when I woke up, but Robert greeted me with a smile as I entered the room. We enjoyed coffee together, and I skimmed through part of his newspaper before he had to leave. About 20 minutes later, Karen returned with some bags in hand. The snow's a hassle, Jessica, but the roads are clear enough. I went out and picked up a few things. Maybe after we tidy up, we can see how they fit. Looking in the bags, I saw that Karen had bought panties, a bra, some pantyhose, a long skirt, a nice blouse and a sweater, plus a pair of shoes. She and I took the things to my room where I eagerly wanted to try them on. As I began to undress, I saw that Karen had not left the room, so I turned away from her, to hide myself. Then as I put the clothes on, I was surprised to see that everything fit. Karen took me to her room, sat me at her vanity, and while she brushed out my hair we talked about why I wanted to be a girl. I didn't know, I just do, I said. How often did my dad beat me, she wanted to know. Often, I told her. Then she wanted to know about my mother. Wasted was the only word that came to mind. My mother was down to 85 pounds at best, her once lustrous hair now grey and dirty, her once bright eyes dead and pale from so many years of abusing booze. I was unable to cry for her though, I was long since past that. Only anger remained. Karen listened to my story without making any judgments, letting me try to explain how and why I felt like I did,
about the terror I always felt around my parents, the dread that always enveloped me every time I had to become a boy, even for a single day, and my longing to be a woman like her, strong and efficient, loving and warm, even to a virtual stranger like me. She made me feel like a person again, a girl person, all without the slightest hint that I was wrong, strange, or even crazy. I began to feel like I wanted to call her mother, yet I didn't, afraid that might upset the delicate balance of trust she and I had established. I couldn't help but notice Karen said calmly as she took my hand, that you have some development that is unusual for a boy. Just how big are you, dear? She had seen me. Slumping in the chair, I looked at her quick smile and gentle eyes, then, B. Well, I'm almost a B cup, that's why I always wear baggy clothes, so Dad won't see. Tell me about it, dear. We can't help you if we don't know what's going on, can we? Once it was out, I had nothing to lose, so I told her how I had always felt like a girl, and sometimes had the chance to dress as a girl, before Mom and Dad started on the booze anyway, and how Mom's doctor gave her some pills to help her condition. But the pills would also make boys grow up like girls, so after she quit taking them because they made her sick when she drank, I kept refilling the prescription, and taking them myself. How long have you been taking them? Karen asked me. A little over a year, I guess. It was just after I turned 14. Well, that explains the smooth skin, wider hips, and your chest. Tell me, how did you plan on hiding these changes for 3 more years? I mean, you'll certainly mature a bit more, and that will mean that everything will get bigger. I know, I said sadly. That's one of the reasons I left. Since Karen asked, we are just girls here. Will you let me see the changes? All of them. Agreeing with a nod, we headed to my room where I stripped down to my panties, allowing Karen to inspect me. Her occasional clicks of disapproval left me anxious until she instructed me to dress again. As she inquired about school and my interests, particularly during our winter break, with Christmas looming, I explained my fondness for math, English, and history, despite struggling academically due to my home situation. After dressing, we returned to the kitchen table, where I braced myself for departure, convinced that once Robert learned the truth, I'd be swiftly sent away. Karen posed a series of probing questions, ranging from my medical care frequency to my means of support, even questioning whether I dyed my hair. I haven't seen a doctor in a while, I admitted. My grandpa left me a trust fund that my parents can't access, so I take $50 a week for myself. And no, this is my natural hair color. All right then, let's start dinner, Karen exclaimed. Robert will be home around 5, giving us plenty of time to bake some bread and maybe a fresh pie. Do you know how to bake? Shaking my head, I confessed my lack of baking skills. Undeterred, Karen guided me through each step, and despite my initial uncertainty, we had a blast. I found myself on the verge of addressing her as Mom a couple of times. The realization that this woman genuinely cared for me, even if only a little, filled me with joy bordering on adoration. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches, Karen had bright brown eyes, soft brown hair streaked with occasional wisps of white, and olive-toned skin reflecting her Mediterranean heritage. Her inviting smile made me feel comfortable opening up to her, despite the shame I knew I should feel but didn't. Covered in flour, I helped with the cleanup while Karen set the table. As the scent of baking pies and bread enveloped the house, I headed to wash up. Around 5, Robert arrived home to find both Karen and me in the kitchen, cooking dinner, laughing, and happy. I see you two have managed to get along, Robert remarked with a smile. We made it work, Karen replied, though I believe you and Jessica should have a conversation. Agreed, Robert's deep voice rumbled. We have some matters to discuss. Turning to me, he added, in my office after dinner? Yes, sir, I replied curtly. Robert, standing at around 5 feet 10 inches, had a round but not quite chubby build, adorned with snow-white hair and a full, white beard that gave him an almost cherubic appearance. Only his wire-framed glasses prevented him from resembling Santa Claus entirely. While Karen and Robert conversed, I tidied up the kitchen. When it was time, I entered his office to find him reading a memo, which he set aside as he motioned for me to shut the door and take a seat. It seems you and Karen have developed quite a rapport, he remarked. I admire her, sir. She's been very kind to me, I replied. She mentioned you've been using drugs illegally. Is that true? They're not illegal, sir. They were prescribed. But not for you, Jessica, his voice asserted, gaining strength. If you want our assistance, we need complete honesty. So please, tell me the truth, all right? Yes, sir. As I understand it, you have the physique of a teenage girl. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I see, he replied, leaning back in his chair. So, we can assume you identify as a girl? Yes, sir. I've always felt like a girl. Always. Pausing to clean his glasses, he rested his elbows on the desk and fixed his gaze on me. Will your parents miss you? I doubt it, sir, except when it's time for my allowance. Why is that, Jessica? Dad uses the money to buy alcohol, if he can scrounge it up. I understand. Do you have any money of your own? It's in a trust my grandpa set up for me. I only withdraw $50 a week. When I turn 18, I'll gain access to the full amount. How much do you think is in the trust? I'm not certain, but I believe it's around $45,000. If we were to arrange for you to stay here, and I'm not confirming that yet, we would insist on your attending school. Karen mentioned you enjoy math and English. What grade are you in? I'm in 10th grade, sir. So, you're on winter break now? Yes, sir, until January 12th. Karen and I never had children, and we're quite set in our routines now, Jessica. However, your grandfather was a dear friend to us, so I simply cannot allow you to wander off without some assurance that you'll be all right. He smiled warmly at me. A girl, huh? Well, I may not fully comprehend it, but I won't dispute what Karen observed. So, for the time being, let's assume you are a girl. I believe you should stay here with us until I figure out what to do next, then we can discuss it further. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Overjoyed, I leaned in and planted a kiss on his cheek. I think Karen wants to speak with you, Jessica. She's in the kitchen, he said, a slight blush coloring his cheeks as I exited his office. As I left the room, I felt a sense of belonging for the first time. Despite my circumstances, both Karen and Robert had treated me with genuine care, not as an object to exploit, abuse, or ignore. My spirits soared, and I couldn't stop smiling as I sat across from Karen. She wasted no time in informing me that in the morning, we would go shopping for more clothes, possibly get a haircut, and definitely find some warmer winter attire. Her words echoed those of a grandmother, but when she clasped my hand, it felt like the touch of a real mother. Overwhelmed with excitement, tears began to trickle down my cheeks. Gradually, they turned into sobs, and when Karen enveloped me in her arms, I cried even harder. Her soothing presence and gentle strokes on my hair made me feel cherished, and I embraced her tightly, never wanting to let go. Later, as I lay in bed, I prayed fervently that Robert and Karen would allow me to stay. I had almost let slip that I considered Karen a mother figure, but I managed to restrain myself before embarrassing myself further. If they decided I had to return home, I knew there would be little I could do except run away again. Drifting off to sleep, I envisioned calling them Mom and Dad. The following morning, Karen was almost relentless in her insistence that I undress. Holding a measuring tape in her hand, she directed me with precision. Despite feeling embarrassed to reveal my true self, whether as a man or a girl, I complied. She paid no mind to my discomfort as she meticulously took measurements in numerous places, leaving me to wonder if she was simply toying with me. Clad in my jeans and the new blouse she had selected, we ventured out of the house together. The sun shone brightly, thawing the thin layer of snow blanketing the streets. I observed people tidying up the last remnants of snow from sidewalks and spreading salt. It felt invigorating to be outdoors, perhaps because Karen was by my side. I felt secure. My hair cascaded down to the middle of my back, parted neatly in the center, with only the waves offering any semblance of vitality. It had been ages since I last had a haircut, primarily due to financial constraints, but its length accentuated my feminine image. Having pierced my ears long ago, I still wore the same pair of studs. Karen pulled into a small plaza and parked, leading me inside a modest establishment that turned out to be a beauty salon. After some discussion, the stylist approached me. As I settled into her chair, she wasted no time in seizing a handful of my hair and snipping it off. Before I could protest, she reassured me, proceeding to fashion my hair in ways I had only ever imagined. She continued to trim it even shorter, then applied some sort of chemical treatment, followed by a lengthy stint under the dryer with rollers in my hair. It felt like a surreal dream finally coming true, and I relished every moment of being there, embodying my true self as a girl and having my hair styled. Subsequently, she tended to my nails, shaping them into a rounded tip and painting them a soft plum hue. While I underwent my transformation, Karen sat nearby, engrossed in a magazine, yet I caught her stealing glances at me from time to time, to which I responded with a smile. My once dingy blonde locks had been transformed into a strawberry blonde hue, shorter in length, with gentle waves framing my face and adorable little bangs that draped neatly across my forehead. This hairstyle is quite low maintenance, honey. Just wash it and blow dry, and it should easily regain its shape. All right, the stylist advised. Oh, I exclaimed, I absolutely adore it. Thank you so much. Karen settled the bill and allowed me to lead the way to the car. We then headed to a sprawling shopping center, one of those outlet places, where I received a crash course in clothing selection, beginning with choosing the right fit in undergarments. I had the opportunity to pick out a couple of skirts with blouses and a dress, while Karen selected a coat, some winter boots, and trousers for me. She also purchased another pair of shoes for me, black flats, as well as pantyhose, panties, and another bra. Afterward, we took a break for lunch before moving on to perfume, makeup, and a few pieces of jewelry. I knew I could never fully repay Robert or Karen for their kindness, but I resolved to try my best. Upon returning home, Karen instructed me to freshen up and make yourself presentable for Robert. He has a soft spot for pretty girls. As soon as I reached my room, I swiftly changed into the new panties and bra, followed by the pantyhose. Then, I attempted to apply makeup in the bathroom. The foundation provided good coverage, and although I managed to apply the mint green eyeshadow adequately, I struggled with the eyeliner, being inexperienced with it. After slipping on the new dress and zipping it up, I spritzed on some of the new perfume and applied lipstick. Stepping into the new flats, I stole a glance in the mirror before leaving the room and heading to the family room, where I awaited Karen's inspection. You look absolutely darling, Jessica. That hairstyle suits you splendidly, and a touch of makeup always boosts a girl's confidence, Karen complimented warmly. Feeling overwhelmed with gratitude, I wrapped her in a hug, expressing how much her assistance meant to me. Then, we proceeded to prepare dinner together. The expression on Robert's face when he returned home surpassed any doubts I had harbored. My dress, a soft grey reminiscent of a cozy sweater, accentuated my figure, while its hem, just above the knees, showcased my legs like never before. My hair, makeup, and nails all contributed to my appearance, but I stood there, eagerly awaiting some sign of approval from him. When I caught him smiling at me, I couldn't resist rushing over to hug him tightly before stepping back. During dinner, Robert casually mentioned, I contacted a friend of mine today and asked him to do some investigating. Flipping open his small notebook, he continued, your mother attempted to access funds from your trust today. She failed, fortunately, but her commotion led to the police being called, and she was arrested. Additionally, according to your school, while you excel in many subjects, several of your teachers noted concerns about your well-being, prompting them to consider involving family social services. He paused, searching for the right words. This acquaintance of mine has arranged for you to stay with us temporarily while we sort out these matters. You'll be residing with us until a resolution is reached. This means enrolling you in school here, although your records will need some adjustment to match the person they'll see. Our attorney will handle that. Do you have any questions so far? Oh wow. Thank you so much. I get to stay here with you, I exclaimed with excitement. For the time being, until we figure everything out, Robert attempted to sound stern, though Karen's wink and smile betrayed their underlying warmth. We'll have high expectations for you, Jessica, Robert continued, his tone softening. You'll be responsible for maintaining your room, attending all your classes diligently, regardless of their subject matter, and dedicating yourself fully to your studies. Additionally, you'll have household chores to take care of. It won't be all chores, Karen interjected, but we do expect you to strive for excellence in everything you do. In return, we'll ensure you have everything you need, both for school and your personal needs. Can we agree on that? Absolutely, I exclaimed, thrilled at the opportunity to stay with them. I'll do my utmost to be the best daughter I can be, I promise. I'll always give it my all. We believe in you, Jessica. We're counting on it, Robert affirmed warmly. Robert, despite his imposing stature, harbored a gentle side. While his demeanor could be stern or demanding, there was a subtle glimmer in his eyes whenever he looked at me, often accompanied by the hint of a smile struggling to break through. I had only heard him raise his voice once, and even then, it was apparent that he commanded respect not through bluster or threats, but simply by the force of his presence. He possessed a soft baritone that conveyed the truth and observed the obvious without the need for yelling or intimidation. I knew I could glean valuable lessons from him and was determined to do whatever it took to remain in the household. Inviting me to join him in his office, we brought our coffee along. Are you affiliated with a church? He inquired almost as soon as I settled into my seat. No, but I've attended a friend's church a few times, I responded. Karen and I are Jewish. Does that pose any issue for you? He queried. No, sir. Why would it? I replied. Because once we resolve this situation, we'll need to register your name at the temple. If we proceed with that, you'll be expected to attend classes to facilitate your integration into our faith. It won't be mandatory, but as a family. He trailed off. I would welcome that, sir, I affirmed. And stop calling me sir, he chuckled. It makes me feel ancient. Yes, of course, I acquiesced. I believe Karen is eager to have a daughter, he continued. She may try to spoil you, so be wary of that. It can become addictive. Like you won't. I teased with a grin. Indeed, dear. Just as I will, he replied, struggling to suppress a smile. Every day following that, Karen and I would tidy up the house, prepare dinner, and in the daytime, she started instructing me in sewing, enhancing my cooking skills, allowing me more time on the computer, and generally fostering a sense of belonging within me. We ventured out to purchase additional clothing, acquiring more skirts, another dress, and a pair of black heels. Karen assisted me until I gained the ability to style my own hair, and my proficiency in makeup steadily improved, reaching a point where I felt confident in creating any desired appearance. On that particular Friday, when Robert returned home, he dropped a stack of papers onto the table, gesturing for us to take a seat, before proceeding to explain their contents. Under my guidance, the FSS has conducted an investigation into your case and has deemed your parents unfit to. He paused, glancing at the paper, nurture the minor child in an environment of trust and growth. Turning the page, he continued, also, under our direction, the FSS and family court have, once again consulting the document, granted temporary custody of the minor child to the petitioners. He pointed to himself and Karen. This custody will remain in effect until such time as the parents can adequately provide for and attend to the needs of the child. Looking up at me with a grin, he added, I suppose you're officially part of our family now. Welcome home, Jessica. Observing a small, uncharacteristically tender tear in his eye, I leaned in and gently wiped it away with my finger before planting a soft kiss on his lips. Holding hands, we joined him in a prayer for our well-being, expressing gratitude to God for bringing me into their lives, although in reality, it felt like the opposite. There are a few more matters to attend to, Jessica, Robert informed me, holding up a document. This paper, he indicated, requires your signature. It legally changes your name to Jessica Michelle, and this one here updates all your school records accordingly. So, If you would sign right here. Every emotion within me surged, and I found myself overwhelmed with tears of joy, embracing both Robert and Karen tightly. The anguish of my past, those countless nights spent alone, felt like distant memories now. As I gazed at Robert and Karen, the fact that I considered myself a unique individual no longer seemed to matter. They had embraced me for who I was, showered me with kindness and affection, provided for me, nurtured me, and welcomed me into their home. I knew I could never fully repay their generosity, but I was determined to try my best. After Karen and I had composed ourselves, Robert retreated to his office alone, but I couldn't bear to be apart from him. I followed him, entering the office and closing the door behind me. "Robert," I began. He glanced up at me, tears gathering in his eyes. I approached him, settling onto his lap and enveloping him in an embrace. "We had a daughter once," he murmured softly. "Her name was Jessica. She passed away when she was just a baby, and we never had any more children. And now, here you are, all grown up. I feel like It's all right, I understand," I assured him, "and I promise you, you'll never regret this, ever." As our eyes met, I ventured, "Can I call you Dad?" "I think I'd like that, Jessica," he replied. We sat in silence for a few moments before I spoke up again. "But, remember, Karen runs this household, and we both know it. Now she just has some assistants." With a playful grin, I hopped off his lap and exited the room, his laughter echoing behind me. I began attending school, and as time passed, we solidified into a tight-knit family of 3, a resilient unit that brought joy to each of us. Robert, whom I now called Dad, revealed his softer side, and I quickly learned how to sway him, much like Mom, though she was the expert while I was merely practicing. Everything shifted when my doctor stumbled upon my secret and began regulating my medication. Karen seemed rejuvenated, more vibrant, and now we take our nightly walks together. Dad, recovering from a minor stroke, doesn't join us, but he's slimming down thanks to the diet Mom and I have implemented, albeit with some resistance. By chance, Dad and I discovered that I had a knack for his line of work, and now I assist him in his office, handling minor tasks until I obtain my license. My 18th birthday is approaching, marking the physical transformation into the daughter I've always been. However, there's a boy, Luca, who has taken an interest in me, so perhaps, after college, who knows? Maybe Mom and Dad will become grandparents after all. Regardless of whom I marry, adoption remains an option, completing the circle of life that families aspire to achieve.